Hello everyone, a very good evening to you all. Let's begin with sexual reproduction in flowering plants. This will be part 1 of the series. Okay, if you like the video, please consider subscribing and liking the video. Okay, let us look at the sexual reproduction in flowering plants. What do we mean by flowering plants is about angiosperms, right? We are talking here about angiosperms. We know that the kingdom Plantae is hereditarily arranged as algae, bryophyta, pteridophyta, gymnosperms and angiosperms. Starting from algae, moving towards angiosperms on the basis of evolution. Right? Or phylogeny. We say that any plant body will have two structures. If you're talking about a plant, then it will have two structures. One will be a gametophyte and the other will be a sporophyte. Okay, so let us look at this question. In plants, spores and gametes are formed by, look at that, mitosis or both are with meiosis, mitosis and meiosis, meiosis and mitosis. Now, we know that gametes have half chromosome number, that is, it should be N. The spores must also be N. Or shall be 2n? Yes, it should be 2n because its germination will lead to the development of plant body. The development of plant body, right? So this should be 2n. Okay, now normal plant body is diploid, right? It is 2n. So, if you want to form spores out of it, then you should undergo mitosis, right? And if you want a haploid content, then you should go for meiosis, right? All right. So, here the correct answer is mitosis and meiosis. This is the correct answer. Mitosis and meiosis. All right. Let us look at this question. In sexual reproduction in plants, gametes are involved? Yes. Spores are involved? Spores and gametes are involved. Yes, because we know that there are two plant bodies, right? The gametophyte and the sporophyte, right? Gametophyte bear the female gamete and the male gamete. The female gamete produces egg cells and the male gamete produces sperms, or we call them antherozoids, right? These two meet and form spores. These spores germinate into a sporophyte. This is how a basic plant life cycle goes as. So the answer should be spores and gametes are involved. Okay, now let's move on to the other page. What we shall know about the sporophyte. The plant body that produces spores and is multicellular and diploid is known as a sporophyte. The sporophytic plant body must be multicellular. Sporophytic plant body must be multicellular, right? What about the gametophyte? The plant body that produces gametes and is multicellular and haploid is known as a gametophyte. This information about sporophyte and gametophyte brings us to the conclusion that the question which we solved previously, this one, if you didn't had the knowledge of what is a sporophyte and a gametophyte, you would have ticked the answer as this, mitosis and meiosis. We know that gametes are formed by the gametophyte. Okay, we just read that gametes are formed by the gametophyte, right? And gametophyte has diploidy of N. So this should undergo mitosis, right? Spores are produced by the sporophyte, right? The sporophyte. Sporophyte's ploidy is 2N. So it should undergo meiosis, right? So the correct answer is meiosis and mitosis. Right? I hope you got the question. Let's continue. What exactly is the life cycle of a plant? I just told you that the sporophyte and the gametophyte undergo alternation of generation. A sporophyte forms gametophyte and a gametophyte forms the sporophyte, right? The sporophyte forms the gametophyte asexually by the formation of spores, and the gametophyte forms sporophyte sexually. This results in the alternation of generation. Gametophyte produces gametes that are multicellular and haploid. The gametophyte is multicellular and it forms haploid gametes. The sporophyte, however, produces spores. The plant body is multicellular and is diploid. Let us look at this general life cycle. Let's begin with the gametophyte. In gametophyte, whose ploidy is N, mitosis occur, the male gamete and the female gametes are formed. After the fertilization, zygote is formed which has the ploidy of 2N. In zygote, mitosis occurs and sporophyte plant body is made. The ploidy of sporophyte is diploid. From sporophyte undergoes meiosis and forms the spores which are haploid, right? These spores undergo mitosis and make more spores or gametes, right? You can also call them spores here. These spores on germination makes up the gametophyte whose ploidy is N or haploid. Now, just look at these two sentences. If gametophyte produces gametophyte, then it is not a case of sexual reproduction. Sporophyte will always produce gametophyte and vice versa. And this cycle goes on in every plant. This is what is called the alternation of generation. Right? Now let us move on to the reproductive structures in the plant body. Let's imagine that this is a plant body we are talking about. Okay? Let us imagine this half is the female one and this half is the male one. In the female, we have got the leaves which we call as megasporophylls, large leaf. In megasporophylls, we have megasporangium. Similarly, in the male part, we can see that this is called a microsporophyll, small leaf. You can see the difference between the size of leaves here, right? This is the female one and this is the male one. And on microsporophyll, we have microsporangium, right? So these are the leaves that produce spores. All of them have a ploidy of 2N, right? Okay. Now what exactly is in megasporangium? Inside megasporangium, you have megaspore mother cells, right? These are megaspore mother cells whose ploidy is 2N. Now this megaspore mother cell will undergo meiosis and form 4 different spores, right? Exactly. Now each of these spores is called as megaspore. And let me tell you that 3 of these will degenerate and only one will remain functional. Only this one will be functional. And the other 3 will degenerate. The next is microsporangium. We have microspore mother cells in it whose ploidy is 2N. Now, this 2N ploidy, when will undergo meiosis, then it will form 4 microspores and each of them is viable. Each of them is viable. It means all 4 of them are functional. Now, this is some basic flow chart what exactly happens in a plant. Okay? Let us begin with the female gametophyte and the male gametophyte, right? The male gametophyte is going to produce the male gamete and female gametophyte will produce the female gamete, right? The syngamy will occur and zygote will be formed. From zygote, sporophyte will be developed, right? Sporophyte will produce 2 types of spores, the megaspore and the microspore, right? The megaspore will be produced through megasporangium and microspore will be produced through microsporangium, right? In microspore, mitosis will occur. Microgametophyte and megagametophyte and or female gametophyte. This is how the life cycle goes as.